mentioned about Dempsey's gloves, because people have always suspected there was something wrong with that fight. I don't know why, but they do. Now, I did an interview with Jess Willard. He was well into his 80s. This would be in the 1960s. I went to his house in California, and we talked about this fight, and he said, I'll show you how I was beaten. And he went to a desk and got out a little cardboard box, and there, lying in the box, wrapped in wadding, was an iron bolt with a big head on it. And he said that Dempsey had clutched this in his gloved fist with the bolt sticking out at the end, and he'd hit him sideways with this so that the bolt hit him. And he said the bolt was found on the floor of the ring at the end of the fight, and he kept it, he said, for nearly 50 years, and he was still angry about it, and he was 80-odd years old. So how about that?
I can't believe it. It's very difficult for me to believe also. I refuse to believe something like that.
Dempsey, the Manasseh mauler, didn't need artificial aids. His fists were good enough. They were good enough in 1921 to destroy the idol of France, Georges Carpentier. And 2 years later, Luis Firpo of Argentina. Although Firpo did knock Dempsey clean out of the ring in the first round. But there was one man Dempsey couldn't beat, and that was the fighting Marine Gene Tunney, a superb boxer. He's the one wearing the white trunks. They met twice in the 1920s, and Tunney outpointed Dempsey on both occasions.
And by just looking at Gene Tunney, a masterful boxer, also way ahead of his time, who didn't get the credit that he deserved because he was a scholar and an eloquent gentleman.
Now here Dempsey is trying to get the title back from Tunney, and this, of course, is the fight which we shall see in a moment, the incident, the famous long count, where he puts Tunney down.
Just look at Tunney, a masterful boxer.
Different altogether in this fight to what we saw against Willard.
A very mature fighter.
Yes, looks much more controlled.
Very controlled.
Now this, of course, is the famous incident where Dempsey was slow to go back to a neutral corner. And although Tunney was down, Dave Barry, the referee, didn't pick the count up until he'd made Dempsey go back to the corner. So Tunney had, we reckon, we've counted the
14
thing.
seconds.
Yes, I think that's right. He had 14 seconds altogether. That's
I don't like this fight. No, I don't like this fight because I think it was something funny going on, you know, with Mr. Barry. Because in the 7th round, I think it was, Dempsey got dropped with a right hand behind the ear, and Mr. Barry count right away. He went right to the count. Right as soon as he went down, Mr. Tunney didn't go to the neutral corner. He started counting right away. And it's very hard for me to believe. And Dempsey was a very loved fighter. Even till this day, everybody still loves Jack Dempsey. But his manager, Jack Kearns, made a lot of enemies for him.
But you see, even here, if you look at this, Tunney's got his arm over the rope, as though he knows exactly where he is and what he's doing. And he gets up at 9. So if he'd had to get up 5 seconds earlier, which he would have done if there hadn't been the delay, don't you think he probably could have beaten the count? He never looks unconscious to me. He always looks as though he's in command.
I'll tell you something. He's a very cool and collected fighter, Gene Tunney. But I think if he would have got up, and I don't think there's no man in the world would have survived the attack like Dempsey was over. I don't think he would have survived.
So what you're saying, Mike, is that you regard Jack Dempsey as one of the really great old generals.
Oh, man, I'm crazy about Jack Dempsey. Because of his ferocious intensity. You know, there's no one like him. No one like him.
Do you see anything in your own fighting that compares with Dempsey?
It would be a privilege, you know, like everyone compared me to him, but I know deep inside that there's no one like Jack Dempsey.
5 of 8 have fallen in the first. Is it 6 of 9 as Tyson comes out with a strong right-hand barrage again?
This is as bad as I've ever seen Donnie Long look, but give Tyson credit, that's it. Wow.
The left hand puts him down. He collapses, and this one is over as the doctors rush into the ring.
After Dempsey and Tunney had retired, Mike, as you well know, there was a period when they had what I call caretaker champions. There were fellows there like Schmeling and Sharkey and Carnera, and even Max Baer, who were not, I think, some of the really great champions.
So good fighters. They were all good fighters.
But, you know, when you think of the really top champions, the one coming up next is one of the all-time greats, Joe Louis. Now, here's Louis in Chicago in 37 to James J. Braddock.
What round is this?
This is the final round, the 8th round, in which Louis wins the title from Braddock.
And Louis showed a great deal of maturity here. He's always a game fighter because, as you know, early in the first round, he came back from a first-round knockdown from James Braddock, who was a very deadly puncher.
Braddock, of course, was known as the Cinderella Man because he'd won the title against everybody's expectations when he was getting on a bit, although he wasn't all that old when he won the title. He was at about 29, something like that.
Really, he was 29. And back then, guys, they were hungry fighters. They were very hungry fighters, and everybody wanted to win. And I hear the story that he was on relief, you know, when he came back to win the title. And that's how I think he got the distinguished name of the Cinderella Man.
What I always like about Lewis when I look at old films of him is that he still looks to me like a modern fighter. You know, he's one of those good old champions who still look modern. You could box like this today and nobody would think it's strange.
True. And it's just unbelievable punching accuracy. Unbelievable. His accuracy was second to none.
Lewis was a very exciting young champion. There we are, all over. And Joe Louis is the new champion. You see, I always think of Joe Louis, Mike, as one of the best, and he might even be the best of all time. I don't know. I don't think one should really say that, but he might be. Do you regard him that highly?
Well, can I tell you something? Joe Louis, from watching him and finding out how his disposition was and the way he thought, it's very hard to see anyone beat him. Even Muhammad Ali. It's very hard because of his keen instinct of boxing. He's just so smart and brilliant, you know what I mean? It's just unbelievable to see anybody beat him. It's hard to picture that. Even though he's in trouble, he's always cool, collect. He's somewhat of a person that he gives you the